Well, I can understand if my wife isn't a beauty, but I at least wanted a beautiful daughter who looked like me. Instead, all she gave me was a plain son who looks like her. It's really disappointing. Kevin always looked down on me, thinking I was an unattractive woman. But who on earth is he talking to on the phone? I pressed my ear gently against the bedroom door and continued to listen. By the way, that men's aesthetic salon I went to the other day was great. Even as I get older, I want to stay well-groomed. Kevin's going to a men's aesthetic salon? I've never heard of this before. Ever since I heard that conversation, I've felt a heavy atmosphere between Kevin and me. And then, I saw it, a prepared divorce form with Kevin's signature. I couldn't forgive Kevin. Just as I was thinking that, James came to my rescue. James said, "Don't hold back any longer. You should submit the divorce papers." You're right, even he seems to want to separate from me. So, I'll file it just as he wishes. That's the spirit. From then on, James and I started our revenge against Kevin. My name is Amelia, a 35-year-old housewife. Since childhood, I lacked confidence in my appearance and always tried not to stand out. Especially during my school days, I envied the pretty girls in my class and often felt inferior. However, my parents taught me to cherish a compassionate heart. So, I believe my close friends always admired me for my kindness. When I became an adult, I forgot about my inferiority complex regarding my appearance and focused on being considerate to those around me. At company gatherings, I would proactively serve drinks and casually talk to new employees who were still adjusting. My motto was to prioritize others over myself. It was Kevin, my current husband, who subtly noticed me. Kevin was a year senior to me in the sales department at our company. He had a handsome face, unlike mine. We didn't see each other often since we were in different departments, but he always showed concern for me at company gatherings. "Amelia, you really pay attention to those around you. I've noticed it for a while." "Oh, no. I just can't sit still and end up wanting to help out. Not everyone can do that unless they're very considerate. I truly respect you for it." Being praised by Kevin, who was popular among the female employees, made me ecstatic. As we continued talking, Kevin and I naturally became close. After a year of dating, I married Kevin. The following year, our son James was born, and the three of us lived happily. However, cracks began to form in our happy days around our 10th year of marriage. Kevin, who rarely went on business trips before, started going on them frequently around that time. Today, I heard he had a 3-day business trip and decided to ask him. "Hey, honey, you've been going on a lot of business trips lately. That never used to happen. Why now?" Well, James was still small before, so my boss was considerate. Our company is very understanding of childcare. But now James is in 3rd grade, and he doesn't have any younger siblings, so I'm being given more responsibilities at work. "Oh, I see," I answered Kevin with suspicion in my voice. Before getting married, I worked at the same company and had never heard of such understanding regarding childcare. Moreover, I couldn't understand Kevin's decision to increase his workload without consulting me. Sensing my dissatisfaction, Kevin retorted. "What's with the attitude? Amelia, maybe it's time you considered returning to work since James is growing up. You're just a woman who's good at being busy." "Good at being busy? What do you mean by that?" "Well, no, I didn't mean anything deep by it." Kevin tried to brush it off, but his words stuck with me. Sure, Kevin is handsome, but I am clearly not a striking woman. Knowing that, his comment made me angry. Maybe Kevin looks down on me in his heart. Perhaps that's why those thoughts slipped out of his mouth. It sounded like he meant that unless I go out and work, I'm a worthless wife to him because of my plain looks. I don't dislike working. However, it bothers me to simply follow Kevin's words. Anyway, our finances aren't that tight right now, so I'll look for a job once James gets a bit older. Fine. Do whatever you want. Kevin responded coldly, turning away. I decided not to argue further and said nothing. From then on, our life became one without conversation. Kevin became just the person who brought in the paycheck. I started to resent living off his earnings alone, so when James was in middle school, I began working part-time. However, Kevin had something to say about that too. "Oh, Amelia, you're finally a part-time lady. It's perfect for you." "What do you mean by part-time lady? You don't have to say it like that." Even when he talks to me, it's never anything good. Even though I'm almost 40, I'm not old enough to be called a part-time lady. Wanting to avoid Kevin as much as possible, I quickly finished my chores and headed to the bathroom. Just as I was about to enter the bedroom after my bath, I heard Kevin's voice. It sounded like he was talking to someone on the phone. I wasn't intending to eavesdrop, but the words I overheard left me shocked. "Well, I can understand if my wife isn't a beauty, but I at least wanted a beautiful child who looked like me. Instead, all she gave me was a plain son who looks like her. It's really disappointing." So Kevin did look down on me after all. But who on earth was he talking to? I pressed my ear gently against the bedroom door and continued to listen. "By the way, that men's aesthetic salon I went to the other day was great. Even as I get older, I want to stay well-groomed." "What? Handsome? Don't say such embarrassing things. Kevin's going to a men's aesthetic salon? I've never heard of this before. Why did he keep it from me? A salon like that must cost quite a bit. Where is he getting the money for it?" But I decided to pretend I didn't hear anything, and after waiting a bit for Kevin to finish his call, I entered the bedroom as if nothing happened. Kevin, pretending not to have been on the phone, acted as if he was asleep in bed. The atmosphere felt heavy. As I got into bed, tears started to fall. I know I don't compare to Kevin in looks. But knowing what Kevin truly thinks of me hurts so much. I tried to cry silently so Kevin wouldn't notice. The next morning, Kevin said before leaving for work, "I have a 3-day business trip starting today. I'll be back late at night the day after tomorrow." With that, Kevin hurriedly left the house. It's Friday today, so he'll be back late Sunday night. I wanted to doubt if it was really a business trip, but I also saw it as a good opportunity. While Kevin was away, I planned to investigate something. And when Kevin returned 3 days later, I noticed a slight change. Somehow, his skin looked more radiant. I see, so that's the reason. During Kevin's absence, I discovered something. Unaware that his secret was uncovered, Kevin mentioned another business trip. "I have another business trip next month from the 20th for a week, overseas." "Okay, I understand." I pretended not to notice anything. Perhaps he's getting a more extensive treatment this time. Or maybe there's another reason he'll be away for a whole week. Then I remembered the person Kevin was talking to on the phone. They had called him handsome for going to the aesthetic salon. Could it be that person? The day of Kevin's overseas trip arrived. Judging by his belongings, it seemed he was indeed going abroad. He had his passport ready. He was dressed in his business suit, showing no signs of a leisure trip. It might be a real business trip, but I'll find out when he returns. I saw Kevin off at the door, noticing his somewhat cheerful demeanor. Now, I had something to do before Kevin returned. I opened Kevin's desktop computer. For someone as meticulous as Kevin, he didn't even lock his home computer. Maybe he felt secure since he never took it out. For me, it was convenient. A week later, Kevin returned. "Oh, I'm really tired. I already had dinner, so I'm going to bed." He headed straight to the bedroom and fell asleep, snoring loudly. He left his bag at the entrance, so I decided to tidy up. The contents were haphazardly stuffed. Despite Kevin's neat appearance, he left the organization of his belongings entirely to me. This is going to be a lot of work." I sighed as I unpacked the bag. From the bottom, I pulled out a sheet of paper. To my surprise, it was a divorce form. And Kevin had already prepared. As I suspected, Kevin had grown tired of me, who paled in comparison to him. I decided to keep the divorce form hidden from Kevin for now. I was also fed up with our superficial married life. Moreover, my investigation on Kevin's computer revealed significant lies. What I checked on Kevin's computer was the credit card history. Fortunately, we shared the credit card, so although I never used it, I had the ID and password for emergencies. I wasn't allowed my own credit card, which I resented, but it came in handy now. Most of the charges were for the aesthetics salon. And every visit coincided with his business trips. Even this overseas trip had suspiciously high charges. Some were in the thousands of dollars, listing brands I'd never heard of. With so many secrets, I couldn't forgive Kevin. That night, I printed something from Kevin's computer. James, waking up from the sound of the printer, spoke to me. "Mom, what are you doing?" The printer woke me up. "Oh, I'm sorry, James." I apologized, trying to hide the printed paper, but it was too late. James picked up the paper, his face filled with shock. "What is this? Men's aesthetic salon? This costs a fortune. Did Dad spend this?" I regretted showing such a thing to my middle school son. "I'm sorry for showing you something strange. But don't worry about it. It's not okay. Mom, you're working part-time and managing everything, and what is Dad thinking?" James was more concerned about me than I expected. He had grown so much without me realizing it. I told James about Kevin's fake business trips to the aesthetic salon and the divorce papers I found. So, I decided to punish Dad by taking screenshots of the credit card history and confronting him. That's not enough. I have a better idea. Leave it to me. James suggested what to do with the printed paper. "And Mom, you don't need to endure this anymore. I'll go with you, so let's submit the divorce papers right away." James's concern gave me the courage to decide. You're right. It seems he wants to separate from me anyway. So, I'll file it as he wishes. That's the spirit. James and I packed our things and left while Kevin was sleeping. As soon as the court opened, we submitted the divorce papers and returned to my parents' house. Since it was winter break, James could take it easy for a while. Kevin, left alone, would probably be more troubled. He often couldn't wake up on his own in the morning. He must have been shocked to find no one at home this morning. Especially since the house was in chaos. As expected, Kevin called with a furious voice. "Hey! Where are you two? And what is all this? You plastered credit card histories all over the house, and those salon receipts, where did you find them?" Yes, I found the receipts Kevin had hidden while packing my things. So, I copied and pasted them everywhere, as James suggested. Aren't you supposed to be at work? It's already work time. Oh, right, you made me late by disappearing suddenly. It's the last workday of the year. That's not my concern. I'm no longer your wife, after all. What? Kevin hadn't realized the divorce papers were gone. What are you talking about? You can't say you're not my wife. Oh? Haven't you noticed? The signed divorce papers in your bag. As soon as I said that, I heard Kevin frantically rummaging through his bag over the phone. You mean those divorce papers? Yes, I submitted them as you wished. You wanted to leave your plain-looking wife, right? And I can't give you a beautiful daughter who looks like you. I never said that. Maybe not to me, but you said it on the phone to someone. Kevin was momentarily speechless. You heard that? Yes, and I heard about your trips to the aesthetic salon. You've been going for quite some time. I found receipts dating back 10 years. That was... I wanted to stay attractive for you. Kevin tried to make a weak excuse. Of course, it was a lie. Oh? If it was for me, you would have sent me to the salon, not yourself. After all, I look much worse than you. What if the gap between us widens even more? Well, that's because... Kevin seemed to be thinking of another excuse. Ha! It looks like you were too lax to even put a lock on your computer. I didn't just see the credit history. There's also Emily on your social media. What? Kevin gasped in shock at my words. Emily was the woman Kevin was exchanging messages with on social media. It seemed the person he was talking to on the phone that time was Emily. She seems to be in her mid-20s. You were probably grooming yourself to attract such a young girl. That's why you were going to the salon. Quite the enthusiast. As I teased him, Kevin was completely at a loss for words. With Kevin unable to respond, I continued about what I saw on social media. I saw Emily's account. It was filled with memories of a joyful overseas trip with you from the 20th for a week. She wrote that you told her you'd leave your wife and even showed her the prepared divorce papers. So, while pretending to be on a business trip, Kevin was traveling with Emily. Those divorce papers were for showing Emily. Now that it was all exposed, Kevin couldn't say anything. I was wrong. Anyway, you have to go to work now, don't you? Oh, right. Kevin hastily ended the call as if he had just remembered. Let's see what happens at his work now. I didn't leave all those proofs of Kevin's extravagance and infidelity just to punish him at home. Kevin would face serious consequences later. For now, I had to establish a foundation for our new life. First, I'd inform James's school of our address change. I'd also ask my part-time job to increase my hours. With all that to handle, I decided to ignore any calls from Kevin. After a while, Kevin kept calling persistently. I had a pretty good idea why he was calling. But it was no longer my concern, so I didn't answer. Regarding James's child support and the infidelity settlement, it was all handled through my lawyer, so I had no direct involvement. However, Kevin eventually showed up at my parents' house. My parents were out, and James was at practice. Kevin took advantage of me being alone, glaring at me furiously as he yelled, "Amelia, why are you ignoring my calls?" "Because I have nothing more to say to you." "You may not, but I do. You sent copies of the credit card history and salon receipts to my office, didn't you?" "Oh, that? I just wanted to confirm if those expenses during your trips could be considered business expenses. You spent so much money, after all." "You idiot. Of course, those aren't business expenses. Right? Especially since your trips were fake." At my words, Kevin let out an "ah" in surprise. Kevin had pretended to be on business trips, staying at Emily's house instead. When he got facial treatments, he wanted Emily to compliment him on how good he looked. Those details were in their message exchanges. I had thoroughly checked their messages. I had also saved and printed screenshots of those messages as proof of the affair. Anyway, I have proof of your affair with Emily, so my lawyer will be in touch. You'll need to pay the settlement and James's child support. "I can't pay that. You got me fired from my job." I was genuinely surprised. "What? Why? You lied to me, but you didn't do anything to trouble your company, did you?" "Well, I used the company's money for the salon and trips. I claimed them as business expenses, but the credit card amounts were too noticeable." Apparently, Kevin had falsely claimed the expenses for transportation and meals during his business trips as necessary expenses to the company. So, when I asked the company if those expenses could be covered, it all came to light. Going to the aesthetic salon every time he was supposedly on an outside job was bound to get him in trouble. It seems his boss also questioned him about the branded items he bought during his overseas trips, leading to the discovery of his affair. Anyway, getting fired is your own fault, so don't blame me for it. Shut up. None of this would have happened if you hadn't done anything. The company is a lost cause, but filing those divorce papers was a hasty decision on your part. So, I'm taking them back and we're getting back together. Kevin, despite his infidelity, was demanding to reconcile with me. Why? You have Emily, don't you? When I asked, Kevin's face darkened, and he said, "Emily was just playing with me. She made me buy expensive branded items overseas, and then recently she said she couldn't be with me after all." "Is that so? So she made you spend a lot and then dumped you?" I couldn't help but laugh. Kevin was just a man who had been used by a young woman. Don't laugh. I was seriously hurt. Emily always said I was handsome, but after we broke up, she blocked my calls and messages immediately, and even blocked me on social media. I already knew she had blocked him on social media. That's because it was me who made Emily do it. The night before I left, I sent Emily a threatening message from Kevin's account while he was asleep. "This is Kevin's wife. If you don't leave my husband, I'll have a lawyer sue you for damages." Emily, scared, blocked Kevin without replying. I deleted the message immediately, so Kevin never knew. Unaware of this, Kevin, with tears in his eyes, pleaded, "I've lost my job and the person I loved. I can't pay alimony or child support anymore. So please, reconcile with me and stay with me." Kevin even got down on his knees. But I had no intention of reconciling. Just then, James came home from his club activity practice. I felt relieved to see my strong ally when I didn't know how to handle Kevin alone. James looked sharply at Kevin. "What are you doing here?" "Hey, James, long time no see. You've grown, haven't you?" Kevin tried to win James over with charm. But James wasn't swayed and yelled with an even harsher expression. "Shut up. This isn't a place for someone like you. Mom is working hard every day to support me, and I'm preparing for exams while doing club activities. We're all working hard. We don't need someone like you who lives in luxury and fools around. Get out. You, how dare you talk to your parent like that? I've been the breadwinner of this family. I deserve some relaxation for working for this family. You'll understand when you grow up. Is cheating your idea of relaxation? Is that what a man supporting his family does? I don't want to be an adult like that. Now get out." James shouted, grabbing Kevin by the collar. Kevin, now shorter than his grown son, had no defense. "Help! I'm sorry. I was wrong." Kevin cried out in fear, completely intimidated. Thanks to James's outburst, I felt emboldened and told Kevin off. "That's right. You weren't involved in raising James, so you may not realize it, but he's grown up more than you think. We don't need you anymore. Lost your job? Find a new one and live on your own." I felt a sense of satisfaction after saying everything I wanted. Kevin began to cry, but I had no sympathy left for him. Defeated, Kevin left with slumped shoulders. I turned to James with a smile. "Thank you, James. For protecting me. It's nothing, we're family. I'll always help you if you're in trouble." I realized how fortunate I was to have such a wonderful son. Being a single mother wouldn't be easy, but with James by my side, I felt strong. Kevin was trying to find work but struggling. He kept calling me and James persistently. But this time, we ignored him completely. Our lawyer ensured Kevin couldn't contact us directly. Without any need to contact Kevin, James and I changed our phone numbers and email addresses. My parents canceled the landline. This way, Kevin couldn't reach us anymore. James heard a story from his friends at school. Lately, there's been a skinny, haggard old man hanging around the park. So I went with my friends to see, and it was Dad. I made sure they didn't realize it was my father and left quietly. Kevin, unable to find work, seemed to be living in the park. He probably couldn't pay the rent and got evicted. James secretly took a photo of Kevin with his phone. There was no trace of the handsome face he once had. His hair was unkempt, and he had an overgrown beard. He hadn't eaten in days, looking gaunt and aged. Kevin, who looked down on my plain appearance, was now leading a pathetic life, regretting his past. After saving enough money, I moved into an apartment with James from my parents' house. James got into a public high school and worked part-time to help with the expenses. 10 years passed after James graduated from high school. James got married and lived nearby. He offered for me to live with them, but I preferred living alone without bothering anyone. I enjoyed my time in the apartment where James and I once lived together. James, while not striking in appearance, found a good wife who understood his character. They had 2 children and were a happy family. I was truly happy James found happiness. I never felt lonely even living alone. James and his family often visited, bringing joy with my grandchildren. Seeing my grandchildren was my greatest joy. I had taught James to be kind-hearted, just as my parents taught me.